On the first episode of Locked On Grizzlies in 2024, yes, I am back, Joe Mullinax in the flesh, or the voice, or however it goes. And guess who else is here with me? Damichael Cole of the Commercial Appeal, the beat writer for the Memphis Grizzlies. The dynamic duo is here to figure out what is wrong with the Memphis Grizzlies, aside from, respiratory illness and that sort of stuff. And we're going to preview a big game in Memphis tonight against the San Antonio Spurs. Lock in with us. It's Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy New Year to you and yours. It is once again the dynamic duo of Locked On Grizzlies, Joe Mullinax and Damichael Cole, with you on this edition of the show. It's a one-time thing because of the way the Grizzlies schedule has gone the next couple of games. So I'll have your back flying solo the next couple of episodes. But we're able to get in one dynamic duo show. It's been too long. Good to see Damichael again, and we're going to have lots of good things. Good is a relative term to discuss on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. And this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way of playing daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. Make sure you're checking us out on YouTube as well as over on Spotify, Apple, literally wherever you get podcasts. Like, comment, rate, review, and most importantly, subscribe. I don't know if you looked at the numbers lately, Damichael. We are getting closer and closer to 3,000 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you to everybody that makes Damichael and I an everydayer. I know shows have been hit or miss over the last few days. It was New Year's, and I think, I talked about my anniversary last week. So all those sorts of things. I love my wife, but that's over now, right? We're into year 11 of marriage. It's no longer, we're not celebrating anymore. Every day moving forward, give her.
You better hope she doesn't watch this episode.
Oh, geez. Gosh. She might hear me as I record right now. It makes me nervous. She might be listening, but I love you, honey. But anyway, whether it's Damichael, myself, or the two of us, you'll have an episode each and every day, give or take a day, through the month of January here on Locked On Grizzlies. And Damichael, we'll jump right in. I hope that you had a wonderful holiday. Haven't seen you in a bit. Good New Year's. You're young and vibrant, and you probably went out and had fun. I rang in the New Year, with my 8-year-old drinking milk and eating but everybody that watches and listens knows we live very different lives. We don't have to go down that path. I am curious, since you kind of held down the fort last week, right? The Grizzlies are on a 3-game losing streak. I have watched and looked at highlights, and I've watched a couple of the games on my little mini vacation. What is, in your opinion, whether it's the Kings game, which is the most recent loss, obviously they had issues against the Clippers, the Nuggets before that. The Nuggets, to me, Damichael, seem like the one that you can kind of push away the easiest. Like, they were the illness going through the team. That was the game Ja missed. The Nuggets are really freaking good, right? Like, I think all that, even if the team was healthy, that's a tough game to win in Denver. Clippers, a little less excusable, even though it was the second night of a back-to-back. And then the Kings game at home, for me, that was the big one where I'm like, what is going on? What is the deal? You saw it, Damichael, front and center. Were they just ready for their New Year's Eve plans, or what are the Grizzlies struggling with at the moment?
Well, you start first with the obvious, and that's what you alluded to earlier. It's the illness bug going around the team a little bit. We saw Ja miss that first game in Denver. Santi dealing with it as well. John Conchar, and Ja was the player that I kind of heard the most about it. About, like, people were telling me, and they seen he was just sweating like really hard, and he was telling me like he's trying to use like Vicks Vapor Rub and all these type of things to kind of I like Vicks Vapor Rubs. Basically to try to get back, right? And he told me even after this game against the Kings that he's still not all the way quite back yet. Just his chest, he still feels it in his chest when he's running, shortest of breaths, all those type of things. So John called it a setback, in a way. Like, even after 25 games and then, finally getting on the court, then he had another setback with this one. So going to Denver is already hard enough, as you kind of alluded to. But I say the Clippers game was just as difficult, being that it was the second night of a back-to-back, and it was a travel back-to-back. So you went into a different time zone, and a Clippers team that didn't lose much in December. So that was a tough one as well. And all three were tough games. The Kings was tough. At the end of the day, those are three teams, I think, at the end of the year, if they're not in the Western Conference Finals, they'll be disappointed. Right. So it's at the end of the day, you're talking about three really good teams. But Joe, we got to get into this center position, man.
Ooh,
Joe, it's
not good right now.
Throw the numbers out real quick. I'll just do it.
Oh, geez.
Jokic.
Numbers are scary.
He's Jokic. He's two-time MVP, right. Finals MVP. I won't go too.
Arguably the best player on the planet.
Let's just keep it simple. 14 rebounds, pretty much played 3 quarters, 30 minutes. Zubac, Ivica, is it Ivica Zubac? That's right.
Ivica, something like that.
Ivica Zubac
always makes me think of the watch.
20 rebounds, 33 minutes, 15
Not
points, 20 rebounds.
Yeah,
DeMontis Sabonis.
Not even a true center, right? I guess you kind of call him a center.
He's played power forward.
Right.
Yeah. 13 points, 21 rebounds. So basically,
now,
what you have
again, I was out for the last few days of last week, like we talked about. Was Bismack Biyombo injured? Like, was he?
No.
Did he miss any time?
Nope.
So he played every game.
He played
and got smoked by those guys that badly.
Bismack, Jaren, X, you name them, whoever they put on the floor.
Anybody that was a big.
They weren't bigs in those games.
That's really bad.
And that's a problem because it's a thing that, one, this isn't new. If you've been following the Grizzlies, me and Joe were talking about this last year as we previewed the playoff series against the Los Angeles Lakers. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but I remember us basically pointing Anthony Davis out as being the bigger concern than even LeBron James in that series because of the fact that you knew his capabilities on the glass. And he was the more impactful player, in my opinion, than LeBron in that series against the Grizzlies because of his rebound. Sure. And this is what you pointed out even more than me. The Grizzlies went into the offseason, didn't do a thing about it. And now, with Steven Adams' injury turned out the way it did, it shows. The reason I think it's important, and we'll probably get to this a little bit more in the next segment, is simply because the Grizzlies have to operate with a different sense of urgency because of where their season is as compared to everyone. They can't operate from the same lens as a bunch of other teams that are trying to be buyers or things. They got to look at it like, hey, we got to go on a run. We got to win, 2 out of 3, pretty much the rest of this season to get to 500. So in order to do that, you can't just say, even though none of our centers are giving us 10 points or 8 rebounds, we'll be fine because we have Ja, Jaren, and Dez each scoring over 20 points per game. No. Doesn't work like that. You got to address the center position, or when you play these elite teams like we've seen over the last 3 games, it shows because it's a separator.
And it's not all going to be teams like the Spurs, who the Grizzlies have tonight, right? And no disrespect to Wembanyama and Popovich and the San Antonio crew. You look at their numbers, they're not really that much better than the Detroit Pistons that everybody likes to make fun of, right? In terms of the on, off, and point differential and all those sorts of things. They just haven't gone on a historic losing streak. So the Grizzlies need to win this game, and we'll talk more about that later. But as you alluded to, and it kind of leads into what we're going to talk about next, there has to be a sense of urgency because if the Ja Morant suspension has taught me anything, Damichael, it's that you have no idea when this is going to end, right? God forbid Desmond Bane blows out his knee, which in no way, shape, or form, I want that to happen. I want to stress that. Knock on all the pieces of wood in your house, in your car, wherever you're listening to this. I just have a greater sense of urgency now than I did about what this core group can do. And I'm close to including Marcus Smart in that. I think that he is a tradable piece. He's arguably the only guy that has real value that they would actually consider trading. But I've seen enough from Marcus Smart that I want to see him around in a playoff series. I don't want to move him now. But other than that, I think it's fair game, and we'll talk more about that. But this front office, led by Zach Kleiman, and I've been one of the guys calling him King Kleiman in the past, it's time to move. Like, it's time to move because if you're going to make this run, it has to start like yesterday, right? And I'm not sure they are on the same page with that, which is fascinating. And you hear rumors and stories and and different things out there from Mark Stein and others that we're going to talk about here momentarily, that is the trade likely in the new year, right? Are they going to wait till the offseason? Is this something that, 5 or 6 weeks from the trade deadline, are we actually going to see them make a move to try to address the elephant in the room, which is they don't have a functional center that can compete at the highest levels that they need to be successful. And when I say the highest levels, they don't need Jokic. They don't need Embiid. They need a guy that can do what Steven Adams did. But to what you said a moment ago, they didn't address that because they thought they were going to have Steven Adams. That's the only logical reason that any of this makes sense. They don't have Steven Adams. That backfired. They have to move on to plan B. How soon they do that, we're going to talk about next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Very excited to do so because that means, Damichael, we're probably going to talk about trades a little bit. And you know how I love discussing trades.
Like your specialty.
Oh, yeah. I'm a big fan of trade discussions. But before we get to that, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by the good folks over at PrizePicks. I love PrizePicks. I know Damichael does too. With the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across both football and basketball with the Specials League. It's a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from a different sport or leagues. For example, you can take Desmond Bane and Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. I think that's pretty cool. Lots of fun. Plus, PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Again, use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we are talking the urgency of now when it comes to making a trade. Stick with us on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, joined by Damichael Cole, the commercial appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. He is the Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for that publication. He does phenomenal work over there. I did my best to repost or retweet, whatever the heck we call it on X. Everything you did while I was away. I love reading Damichael's stuff. He's, in my opinion, the best out there, combining the beat writer aspects when he does his analysis and all the different works that Damichael does. If you're not following him on X to do the same thing, see when new pieces come out at Damichael C, you're making a mistake. I'm Joe Mullinax. Follow me on X if you want. It's a poor choice, but by all means do so at Joe Mullinax. You'll get mad at me every once in a while, but, I'm good for interaction. I'm good for the engagement over on social media. Speaking of engaging, right, it appears the Grizzlies are engaging, at least dipping their toes in the proverbial water when it comes to trade discussions, Damichael, perhaps trying to address the issue that we alluded to earlier on in the program about how there is no functional center to play at the level that the Grizzlies need in order to actually make a run at getting back into the play-in. So there's been rumors from Mark Stein and others talking about Pascal Siakam, which would be super cool, super unlikely because that would have to involve a lot for the Memphis Grizzlies to acquire him. Stuff around the Chicago Bulls and Andre Drummond have been brought up. Some of it has a little bit of smoke to it. Like Mark Stein is pretty in tune. So I would imagine if he hears something, he would not be full of it, so to speak. But I'm curious, as somebody who watches this team so much, you see them in person, you travel on the road several times to watch them in different venues, different arenas. What is your sense of urgency regarding this team? Like, is there a disconnect between the front office where they're still kind of comfortable thinking things are going to come around? Or are they, able to look at the schedule like you and I do and say, we're running out of time if we're actually going to do this, and we need to try to fix this problem because it's a pretty massive problem. I don't want anyone to think, that we're belittling it, whether it's Kelly Olynyk, whether it's Clint Capella, Andre Drummond. There's all sorts of different ways that we could go, and maybe I'll do this later on this week on one of my solo shows. There's lots of different angles that you can take in terms of what type of guy you want to fill that void. But the void is there. And how quickly do they fill it? Do you think they feel that sense of urgency too up in the front office?
Not to the same level. Zach Kleiman always has this way he likes to operate from the perspective of the Grizzlies want to be kind of like cautiously aggressive. They don't want to hamper the future too much by putting too much attention on this season or the current or whatever the case may be. So I don't think their urgency matches the fan base. The fan base probably sees that, wow, you got Ja, Jaren, and Dez playing really well. You got Marcus Smart he's guarding those bigger wings, very well so far. Like
they came back against New Orleans because of Marcus Smart. Don't get it twisted. The second time it was Marcus Smart.
Did you see him guard Sabonis?
Phenomenal job against Sabonis.
He's showing it. But you got those four guys, and it feels like the center position is that one position that's kind of the leakage right now. So I don't know if they have the same urgency as the fan base, but there is some urgency. Like, I expect them to kind of move, some pieces around and see what's out there, but it probably won't happen right now. And that was the thing that I kind of was alluding to. You remember earlier in the season, we were talking about trades, and I was like, December trades are dime a dozen. It's very rare. And we saw it. There was only one trade this December.
It was a big one.
And it was a big one. And Joe, while we're on the topic of that, I want to get your opinion on this too. Let's jump into the Joe Mullinax trade position real quick, because a lot of the people in the fan base saw the trade that we're talking about, we're referencing here, was OG Anunoby being traded to the New York Knicks. Yeah. And the Knicks gave up Emmanuel Quickly, who was a 6th Man of the Year candidate last season. And they also gave up a starting, wing in RJ Barrett. And I said to a Grizzlies fan that the Grizzlies couldn't have matched that offer.
Never in a million years.
And that's what I wanted you.
No shot.
See, that's all I wanted you to say. And from a player standpoint, because you could throw all the picks at them, but that's where the Grizzlies. Because
what would that even have looked like for Memphis? It would have had to have been Marcus Smart, and it would have had to be Luke Kennard.
Maybe
in terms of role between the Knicks and the Grizzlies.
Role wise, that makes sense.
It's not. RJ Barrett was the number 3 pick in the 2019 draft. You had Zion 1, Ja 2, and Barrett 3.
And Quickly is an upside guy. They're bringing him to Toronto to start, and his career probably takes off after this.
And we'll find out on Wednesday more than likely, right? Yeah, when the Grizzlies take on the Raptors, you'll get to see that.
We're going to see it up close. Exactly.
So I think that trade was a win-win for both teams. And I think that Memphis, and that was a wonderful segue, partner, the Grizzlies have a chance to do the same thing, right? I'll use the Utah Jazz for an example. And I want to stress, like, if you want Andre Drummond, you can talk me into Andre Drummond. If you want Clint Capella, you can talk me into Clint Capella. I'm at the stage where they just need an upgrade at the center spot. But I'm using Utah because Utah is a team that clearly doesn't really necessarily care about this season, right? The Bulls.
I know where you're going with this, Joe.
Yeah, I'm going Kelly Olynyk.
I don't like it.
That's okay. I want to stress, I'm cool with the Drummond and Capella because you want somebody that can fill that Adams void. Olynyk doesn't do that, so I'm with you there.
And that's the problem,
right? But my what I'm trying to say is I'm just using that from a sense of realism.
Yeah,
you could throw John Conchar, Jake LaRavia, and a 1st-round pick at the Utah Jazz. I think that works money-wise. Memphis doesn't go over the cap. They still have that trade exception kind of room that they can work with. And that's a trade that could theoretically happen, right? But
I got one for you.
Yeah, please.
How about this name? Goga Patatse.
Oh, from Indiana. He used to be in Indiana.
That's where he was drafted. And speaking of that, I got a quick story right there. On draft night, that was my year. I was interning out of college at Sports Illustrated 2019, and no one went to his table. I went up there to talk to him. He could barely speak English, and look where he's now. We're talking about him potentially being a piece for the Grizzlies. But I always get into these conversations. To me, you always got to start with the teams that have incredible depth, and that's a team that now with Wendell Carter back, they have him. They're financially tied to him, even though he hasn't played well yet. You got Mo Wagner, who
is the brother of one of their stars.
Exactly. And you got Goga, who is a great defender. He's graded out the advanced analytics grade him as one of the top defensive centers in the game right now. And that's a guy who you could get for cheap. And again, you could move a couple of those pieces that you mentioned. But
Sure.
The point is that we're on the same page as an upgrade should be a priority for this team.
In the next 4 to 6 weeks, it needs to happen. And whether it's Goga, whether it's Olenek, and again, talk to us in the comments, especially on YouTube. Like, let us know what you just want to see an upgrade, period? Does it need to be something in particular, like a Goga or an Andre Drummond, someone who can be that defender, be that rebounder, that Steven Adams-esque kind of guy? Where are you at with this? Because I'm of the mindset, Damichael, they just need somebody. Because Bismack Biyombo ain't it. Xavier Tillman ain't it. Steven Adams ain't walking through that door. Brandon Clark could be, right, in the next 6 to 8 weeks walking through that door. But by then it might be too late. And the season may essentially be over. And you just hold him out just to make sure he's 100% for the start of next season. There's so many different ways this can go. What did our audience think? I'm interested to see that in our comments section on Locked On Grizzlies. We'll revisit this, I'm sure, down the road. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, like Damichael and myself. I've been told we've been on the show or on this channel a few times, Damichael. Plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. Ooh, it's that time of year, Damichael. Things are getting hot with the NFL playoffs. Obviously, the NBA in full speed ahead. There's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's right, $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is extremely easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays, finding bets in the new Explore tab, making a parlay in the Parlay Hub, which is the best way to find popular parlays, and so much more. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we will close out the show previewing a very interesting contest for Memphis between them and the Spurs. Must wins in January? Yeah, I think we're there. We'll be back. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, flying, not solo. It's the dynamic duo riding once more. Damichael Cole of the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. He's a Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for that publication. I did have somebody in the comments on YouTube, Damichael, make it sound like I make fun of you. Like I'm not being serious in all my praise. I am being dead serious in my praise.
What did they say? What did they say?
It was just something like I'm on to you, Joe, the way you talk to Damichael or something like that. No, I truly enjoy Damichael's work. And, I've had some changes in my own writing stuff that nobody cares about. Fair. That's fair. But, Damichael's one of the reasons I'm still doing this, man, is I enjoy talking to you guys, obviously.
People don't know, Joe. You were like my first interview when I got the job.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I've reached out to you, and I'm a big Damichael Cole fan. I've been one of the earliest Memphis Damichael Cole fans, so that aren't your family members, because obviously they've liked you longer than me. But no, I'm happy to be with you here, and happy in 2024 to keep building the show. We've mentioned we're almost at 3,000 subscribers on YouTube. Hopefully we hit that number this month. Keep spreading the good news that is Locked On Grizzlies. We appreciate it. Hopefully there's good news to talk about on our next episode. The Grizzlies play the Spurs, and hopefully Memphis is feeling a little bit better in terms of the illness that's been going around, and hopefully the injury report stays low. Obviously just recently dropped heading into the game against the Spurs. Damichael, what are some of your keys for this game? Because I'm nervous whenever you say it's a must win, because I do think it's a must win. They have to string together games like this, the Raptors on Wednesday night, to find ways to get back into the play-in conversation realistically. We can't keep saying they're 5 or 6 games out with 50 to go. Eventually it's going to be 5 or 6 games out with 40 to go, and then 30, and then all crap, it's slipping away. They got to start putting some wins together. How did they do it against the Spurs tonight?
Well, it starts with identifying who on the Spurs can be those difference makers that could change this game. If you look at the games that the Spurs have won this season, it's been games where like Devin Vassell goes off and, makes like 7-8 3-pointers, or Wembanyama, arguably his best game of the season, came against the Suns. when they beat. Well, I think they beat Phoenix twice, but those games against the Suns, he was really, really dominant. So that's kind of where you got to start, and those two guys really stand out to me. You know, I've said in the past, like Devin Vassell, he's you talk about his trajectory of where
Devin
he's
Vassell, hooper.
He's a hooper. He's a hooper, and he takes some wild shots. He's hooper all the way. Like you're gonna see him just he's a chugger. Like, but he shoots efficiently. But with all that being said, I think he's a guy that you really have to watch. Looking forward to who the Grizzlies assign that matchup to, and then of course Wembanyama. Memphis really loves to score in the paint. I've been wanting to see how this is going to work out. You know, how is San Antonio going to use him? Are they going to use him from a roamer perspective where he's going to be able to be out on the perimeter a lot? Because if that's the case, then you could do what teams are doing to the Grizzlies and Jaren Jackson Jr. The Grizzlies have kind of put Jaren, and I asked Taylor about this. I think a lot of people have kind of seen it now the last couple of days when I asked them about the way that they're using Jaren Jackson Jr. And they're basically, you know, we talked about it, Joe. They put him on the Herb Jones or the Peyton Watsons, as we saw the other day. The opposing team's worst wing shooter. And when those teams have, quote unquote, worst wing shooters that are actually decent shooters, Jaren is nowhere near the rim, and he has to close out, and it takes away the shot blocking ability that he has. So teams can kind of flip that around and do that on Wembanyama as well if the Spurs deploy him that way. But I think what they're going to do is basically say, hey, we know Ja wants to go in the paint. We're going to have Wembanyama there waiting on him, and I can't wait to see that. But to win this game, Grizzlies got to take care of the basketball. I think the rebounding issues of those fast few games should be in the past. You know, Wembanyama is a very good rebounder, but it's more, you know, just natural skill at this point for him. While those other guys, Zubac, you know, Jokic and Sabonis are just purely best rebounders in the league. So that's where it starts for me. San Antonio is capable of turning the ball over. You turn them over. They play that lineup where, for some reason, I just can't make sense of it. They don't start Trey Jones, who is the natural point guard. Instead, they got Jeremy Sochan playing all out of position, and it looks ugly. So you're not going to get super quality half-court positions from them. Guard up, and I think the Grizzlies will be fine.
This should be a game where they're fine, and I'm with you on turnovers. You know, I talk about that a lot. You have to protect possessions, especially when your offense is still struggling to put points on the board consistently. You have to have as many opportunities for that as possible. That's offensive rebounding, and that's limiting turnovers. And it's bad turnovers, right? There's a difference between trying to make a play on a skip pass to an open shooter in the corner and somebody deflects it and an offensive illegal screen, right? Like there's a difference in those types of turnovers. So the right kinds of turnovers when they need to be made, as opposed to sloppy play, lack of execution, not doing the things that you're supposed to do. I'm excited because the only guy that, you know, the Grizzlies have been playing that, you know, could technically be on the roster is Jake LaRavia. That's on a G League assignment. He's with the Memphis Hustle. He is the only guy, right? Gigi Jackson's a two-way player. Jacob Hilliard, two-way player. Adams and Clark remain out. But we're going to get another game of Luke Kennard and Marcus Smart and all these guys getting run together. For me, a key to this game, Damichael, is continuing to figure out those lineups and those matchups. And, you know, I've been saying all along, call me at MLK Day, right? We're 2 weeks away from that now.
Closing
so we've got, 6 or 7 games, really, to kind of get a vibe for what this team is capable of with this group of players. How that is deployed by Jenkins is going to be fascinating, because Vince Williams Jr. is a great example of that. Like, Zaire Williams just shouldn't play anymore, right? Like, he shouldn't play. David Roddy, I think you could argue, it has been pushed out by Vince Williams
He's
Jr.
your 10th or 11th guy.
And I think Vince Williams Jr. played only like 7 minutes or something like that against the Kings.
Yeah.
Now, it got out of hand against Sacramento, and maybe he decided to just kind of get him some rest. I don't know. You know, I'll be honest, that was a game I caught highlights of.
Yeah.
It's
a tough spot.
But he's shown enough to me.
I agree.
He needs to be a guy. If
he's got to be on the floor.
I'm not saying he plays in front of Marcus Smart, because that was always silly, right? Marcus Smart should be that guy. He shouldn't play in front of Luke Kennard, but he should play in front of Zaire Williams and David Roddy. Like, he has shown this season that he is capable of giving more to this team. It's Ja Morant and it's Vince Williams Jr. in terms of guys that have the best plus minuses, according to Cleaning the Glass, on the roster. You got to have Vince Williams in the mix if you want to compete at this stage.
Yeah, I'm with you. And he's Locked On viewers, make sure you go check out the story that I wrote this morning
Please.
about Vince Williams. Because it kind of gets into his mentality a little bit. He's a little quiet guy. He's quiet, right? And this was kind of one of those opportunities where he opened up a little bit. So go check it out. But
go check it out.
The thing about Vince Williams is he's impactful. I know someone pointed out to me like, the shooting is kind of tailed off, 6 of 30 in his last 4 or 5 games, but the impact is still there when he's on the floor.
Defensively, it's massive.
Did you see how he was guarding Paul George?
Like for most of that game? Gigantic effort. Absolutely.
You don't got to make a shot if you got Paul George shooting 1 of 10.
Correct.
Like please, but he has been a terrific find for them, and I'm with you. Just I'll twist it up a little bit here. In that continuity, I feel like for me, it's more about the rotations because right now, what I noticed more than anything is that last game was like a track meet against the Kings. And it wasn't just because the Kings like to get up and down, the Grizzlies like to get up, down, back and forth. It was because when Ja Morant went out of the game, I was interested to see. I was like, would Derrick Rose be pushed out of the rotation, and Desmond Bane will continue to play that secondary, ball handler, point guard role? Because clearly Marcus Smart is pretty much just a wing now. The whole point guard thing is not a thing right now unless they need him to be. But it was interesting to see what they go. Derrick Rose, they go Bane. They went Derrick Rose. And the difference, we talk about downhill Dez and all that, but at the end of the day, they have to play a little bit slower when it's Dez because Dez plays defense and he guards Brandon Ingram and all these other quality guys. Whereas with Derrick Rose, he pushes the tempo similarly to Ja. He doesn't go all the way coast to coast, like Ja, but he gets you from the opposing side all the way up to the 3-point line on your side, and with 18 seconds on the shot clock. And that is a difference. That's a huge difference for the Grizzlies. So basically, it feels like for 48 minutes, they have that tempo that they want, right? Now it's about putting the right pieces and mixing and matching together. We talked about how lately Dez and Jaren have been playing together really well. Ja playing with the bench has worked out well. Now you get Ja with the bench, and you got Luke Kennard playing. So now you're talking about spacing more. Santi's been kind of scuffling a little bit as of late. See if he can find it, and get out of this. But you're basically putting Ja around shooters, and you're putting Dez back in a natural shooting guard position. When Ja goes out of the game, you have Derrick Rose. So I just want to see how that continues to work out because they got something there. They got something. If it's for the first time this year, to me, it feels like with the Grizzlies, 48 minutes, they can throw out a lineup where you have at least a couple offensive options where it's not, Jaren's got to score or this is going to be ugly. Now you can say, you got Dez and Jaren playing together. You got, Derrick Rose setting them up. And you got Ja playing in a lineup with Luke Kennard. And, when they go into that rotation in Santi Aldama or whatever the case may be. So you got multiple options. And that should bode well for them going forward.
You've got San Antonio tonight. You've got the Raptors tomorrow night, right? In a home back-to-back, which is nice. Yep. If you're going to have a back-to-back, having it in the friendly confines of FedEx Forum, supposedly friendly, right? They're still 2-12 at home. But it's good for travel purposes, right? Then they go to Los Angeles on Friday. They're at Phoenix on Sunday. They're at Dallas on Tuesday. So what's the point I'm trying to make here? If you include Memphis, they're going to be in 4 different cities in less than a week. Not a ton of time for practice. So when they have the opportunities, it's shoot-arounds, right, as you know all too well about, and it's game time to kind of get this figured out. The NBA schedule is relentless. They have to find these fits within games, and that's a challenge for coaching. So Taylor Jenkins is going to continue to be pushed in that way. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Locked On, remember, has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. The next time we're on, it's going to be me solo because Damichael has a day job covering the Memphis Grizzlies for the commercial appeal. So he'll be grinding over the next couple of days there in that role. Damichael, what are some things that you're looking for over these next couple of games? Because I'll talk about the Spurs game. I'll preview the Raptors, the new look Raptors, as we mentioned a moment ago. But since it'll be me by myself the next couple of shows, what are some things you're looking for over the next couple of days for Memphis?
Well, you're going to get Darko back in the building, right? Darko Rakovic. That's going to be fun. former Grizzlies assistant. That Raptors team has some talent over there. Pascal Siakam, Scotty Barnes is a future star. Like he's on the cusp of that. They're gonna build around him. Quickly, we'll see how he. I just feel like there's a leap for him in that role, Joe. That's just I feel like he's gonna take a leap going from a 6-man role to they're giving him the keys over there to the point guard position. That Raptors game could be a little bit tricky on the second night of back-to-back, but I just want to see one, Ja, as he continues to get over this illness. We saw he wasn't as effective in the paint in the last couple games and things like that. Just want to see how he continues to work his way back from that. More than anything, these are 2 games you better win. And I think you were alluding to that earlier. And you threw the next 3 out there. The Western Conference is so tough. And at the end of the day, the Grizzlies aren't going to get by just by beating the Spurs, the Jazz, and the Blazers for the rest of the season. You got to, when you go on this next road trip, you got LA, Phoenix, and Dallas. You're probably going to have to win 2 or 3 of those. I mean, you win 1, then you're keeping the pace that you're at right now, and you're not going to move the needle in terms of getting to the top tier of the conference and potentially cracking the play-in. You got to win those type of games, Joe.
Massively important, and you'll get to see it front and center from your seat there on press row as a beat writer for the Grizzlies for the commercial appeal there in Memphis, but also, of course, of Locked On Grizzlies. And I look forward to talking with you again in a couple of days about these games and looking ahead to that West Coast swing. Again, thank you so much for making us a part of your NBA and Grizzlies content consumption, whether you're an everydayer with us each and every time an episode drops, or whether it's your first time here, maybe you're somewhere in between. Hopefully you stick with us, Damichael and I, on Locked On Grizzlies as the season grinds forth. For Damichael Cole, I am Joe Mullinax. Stay locked in wherever you get your podcasts on YouTube. Can't wait to talk to you again. Go Grizzlies. Stay locked in.